guys, this is Hayes with CheatSheetPros.com. Today is Friday, February 7th, and I'm going to walk through this MLB cheat sheet, and we're going to take a look at it. So tomorrow on Saturday, I've made some changes, so this might look a little bit different if you've got one of the test run sheets that we've released this week. So whether you're doing player props, sports betting, or daily fantasy, we've got everything you need in here. I'm not going to focus so much on these other three tabs. We have one for prize picks that gives you the last 5 game logs, BVP. We have one for stacking, which we'll briefly hit. And then we also have a hitters tab that kind of breaks everything down for you. But the one I'm going to focus on for the tutorial is this main tab. So this main tab is going to give you everything you want. If you want a quick look at the game because you're sports betting or playing DFS, or you're looking for some pitchers to attack, you can find it all right here. If you want to dive deep and dig in and look at game logs and specific stats, you can find it right here. So we're going to walk through this tab. A couple notes, you've got your quick look up here across the top. So if you're sports betting or searching for players to stack, look no further than right here. We have our game logs that breaks everything down. We have our teams. This is your Vegas team total with your Vegas implied total. And then we have the win percentage, and then our custom model, which we're going to continue to tweak. We have it over here. So here you can see we have this one slightly projected to go over, and you can see we have a drastically different win percentage. And I just showed the advantage here in a percentage form, which once we get some more stats, we'll be able to tell you what percentage is a good play and what to look for. Last 10 power ranking goes here. This is something that's key for baseball because so many things change throughout the season. People get hurt, they're gone. So we focus on the last 10 games and how they're doing. And then the bullpen over the last 10 games, we rank their ERA, whip, and home run per 9. Typically, most people don't understand specific difference between ERA like 3.3 and 3.7. So we rank it, so it's an easy number that you can see. Lower number is good for the team, and higher number is bad for the team. Over here, this is just the bullpen ERA. I brought it in so you can kind of see the 30th ranked ERA is 6.34. The 8th ranked ERA is 3.24. And then this is going to be your pitcher quick look. What I love about this here is I can see their start, their last start, and then the prior start. So these pitchers don't have 2 starts yet, but it will fill in once they do. So here we can see Lucas Giolito in his first start of the year had 5 innings pitched, 2 earned runs, 6 Ks, and it was against Houston. What I've added to this is I love the game logs, but going and Googling the name and looking at it takes a lot of time. So I love to see the last couple of starts. And so here I can quickly look and say, okay, is this pitcher coming off of a good start, a bad start? If it's a bad start, was it in Colorado? And then you can see here, Rich Hill went 5 innings, 3 earned runs, 7 Ks against Cincinnati. So a weaker team, stronger team, but you get an idea. Here we're just going to show a quick look. We have all the detailed stats below, but we've got the ERA, XFIP, WHIP, and K9. K9 is great for player props, or if you're looking for strikeout potential or upside in DFS, you want someone with a high K9 rate. Everybody knows what ERA is. That is earned run average. What is good about XFIP, and XFIP is my favorite stat to look at if you don't want to dive too deep. Think of the XFIP as what the player's ERA should be. So here we have Lucas Giolito with a 3.60, but they're saying his XFIP is 4.31. So he has a little bit better than what his ERA should be. So he's going to regress a little bit. Now, given this is one start, take it with a grain of salt. But Rich Hill with an ERA of 5.4 is not very good, but his XFIP says it should have been 3.91. So Rich Hill should be much better. This is key if you're doing player props or daily fantasy sports or even sports betting, because everybody's going to play the 3.6 guy. No one's going to play the 5.4 guy. But if you look at the XFIP, it tells you a little bit different story. So I would have some Rich Hill exposure. And again, this is just a quick overview. So this up top is going to give you a good breakdown of the game. We'll continue to add more stats to it. And then down here we have our projected lineup. One thing I want you to focus on is right here. It says lineup status confirmed. So when I launch it in the morning, it's pending. Every time you open up the sheet, it goes out, it looks for the starting lineup, and it pulls it back. And if it's confirmed, it flips from red to green and says confirmed, so you know this is the lineup and you're good to go. We have that for both teams. Now, this is your basic stats up here. This really focuses on batter versus pitcher history. This right here is going to be your total. I've got a little indicator box. You can kind of see it's darkened out that indicates if it's a strong BVP for the hitters or for the pitcher if it meets certain thresholds. You'll see that. But what I'm looking at here is, one, how many at-bats have they faced them? 22. That's not many. Throw it out the window. If it gets between 70 and 100, then I start looking into it a little more. I want to see what their average K rate is and how many home runs. This will give you good information. Also, we have the handedness. So if you have a pitcher that has a strong strikeout history versus right-handed hitters, you can see here this lineup is loaded with right-handed hitters. That's probably a good spot for him to be. We have season stats, average K rate, fantasy points last 7, DK, FanDuel, salary, batter versus pitcher, pretty basic. Now, one of the things that's new on this, if that wasn't on our test sheet, is our hot hitter stack. So if you're playing DFS, I always talk about average cost per hitter. So typically, and I'll put the table on the sheet going forward, but if you're over $5,000 per hitter, that's your Aaron Judges. That's a pretty expensive stack. If you get around 45, that's more normal. 4,000 to 45 is pretty key to sit in. If you get less than 4, then that's ideal. You can have some stud pitchers, and we'll go into that. But for each team, we're going to give you the highest grade stack that you can put together. And then this is the duplicated starting lineup. I brought it down here, and the reason I made it again is I want to see the fantasy production over the last 6 games, especially if I'm playing DFS. I want to see, have they been playing in these games? Have they not been playing in these games? I also have a custom grade for each hitter. You can see if it's over 80, they are in the red. If it's below 25, it's in the blue. Now, they've only got 5 games, so these are going to move all over. So we might tweak these a little bit. But then we have your key stats versus the pitcher handedness. And we have your average strikeout rate, WOBA, and ISO. Strikeout rate versus pitcher handedness is key when you're doing player props. But then weighted on base and ISO will give you some additional power numbers. If you don't want to dig into those and find out what it is, then your WRC Plus is your catch-all. Just think of that as 100 is average. So if it's over 100, you're above average. If it's below 100, you're below average. Typically throughout the year, you'll see 70 to 90 for the lower hitters, and then 120 to 140 for the higher hitters. These numbers are insane right now because some of them have only played, 1 or 2 games. If you see a player like this that's blacked out across the board with NAs, we just don't have his game logs yet. We just need to update his name. Just disregard, move on. We'll catch up to it. There are over 500 players in the MLB, so we're working with it. But again, this is going to give you key stats versus the pitcher hand and our custom grade. Red is good, blue is bad. So that's an easy way to look at it. Now, when we get into the pitchers, all the information you need is right here. So we've got last season's stats. So if you want to see how they did last year, or if you want to see how they did this year, which there's not enough stats for 2023, so you can go back and look at last season. But we've got their overall stats, and then we split it up in 2 ways. We split up road versus home and lefties versus righties. You can also see the pitcher handedness here, and we got their win-loss record from last year to current year, but this gives you a good idea when you're looking at the lineup up here on the handedness of hitters, how they do versus that handedness. If there's not enough stats, then see how they did last year. We also have the bullpen rankings over here. So this breaks down the detail of every pitcher, lefty, righty, home, road, splits for current season and last season. So if you want to dive deep, you can dive deep without going anywhere else. Now we get into pitcher game logs. So thank you to Jessica. She's helped us. She's been tremendous in allowing us to pull in game logs for, I think we started with NFL mid-season, and then with NBA, we've been pulling game logs. And that's huge for prize picks and player props. So here are your pitcher game logs. We're going to go back 7 games for 7 starts. So he has 1 start so far. You can see who they played, how many innings. PO is pitching outs. Pitching outs is a prize pick prop that they do, and it's also on the DK Sportsbook. Strikeouts, and then hits, earn run, fantasy score for prize picks, ERA, whip, walks, and then your DraftKings and FanDuel scoring. So you've got all the information right here. And when we get going in the season, you'll be able to say, okay, any price pick lines here. So he has a prop of 4 strikeouts. So you can look across here and say, okay, he's been over that every game. So he had 7 last game. He's got 4. that's one I would possibly be interested in, and I would dive in a little bit more and look at the lineup and the K rates and whatnot. So flipping down now, once you leave this pitching area, so this pitching area, this is good for anything you're playing or looking at. You can dive deep, look into it. Now we get into the hitters. Now I put this at the bottom. These are the batter game logs. So this is the first hitter, second hitter, third, etc. You guys know how to count. We go all the way down to 9. So your batter game logs is just like your pitcher logs. We have the last 7 games. We have what the final score was. We have the date of the game. And then over here up top in this little black, it might be kind of hard to see. I put what they went. So, 1 for 4, 1 for 5, 1 for 4, 2 for 4. And then you can see hits, runs, RBIs. Price Picks has this new one, hits plus runs plus RBI. So I thought that was neat. So I put a column in here for it and then a total for it as well. They also have total earned bases. These are basically singles, doubles, triples, home runs. It has to be from a hit. And then you can see the total bases are added up here. And then we have our Price Picks, DK, FanDuel scoring. And then down here, I put hitter strikeouts in purple because they do some batter strikeouts. So I wanted to kind of get an idea of if a player's striking out a lot, which here you can see Tim Anderson striking out about once a game. And then also stolen bases and home runs I pulled in just because stolen bases are huge for fantasy scoring on Price Picks. I believe they're +5. And also if you're playing season long. And then I brought in the home run, which we'll play with that later on. But you can look through all of the players and kind of see how they've done if you want to get into their individual game logs. Again, if a player's not listed, just kind of move on. So right here, I want to focus on Brian Anderson. He's been red hot. So look at his prize scoring, 16, 24, 33, 14, 3 and 7 the first 2 games. But the last 4, he's been 14 plus. And he's got a stolen base, home run, 2 home run, and then... Oh, sorry, my allergies. Throat's getting dry. But look at his hit, run, RBI total. 3, 8, 6, 3. He's been doing really well there. So he's someone that potentially you could pop in, take a look at. But again, this main tab, no matter what you're doing, digging into, you can look at it here. Click inside the home team, flip down. You can flip through all of these games, take a look at all the pitchers, what they're doing, and go from there. Sorry, my throat. So we're flipping off here. Let's go ahead and take a look at some of these others. So your stacker tab. Now, when you're playing daily fantasy sports, what you want to do is you want to stack teams. So typically people will do a 5-3 stack, which is 5 hitters from one team, 3 hitters from another team, or they'll do 4-4 where it's 4 from each team. But almost anyone that plays DFS, they know stacking is your best option and they're always going to stack. Now, when I sort this, if I remember, I put it in here by the Vegas team implied total. So your chalky games are going to be these top ones. Usually the top 2, top 3, these are going to be the chalky teams that you can stack. They're usually going to be pretty expensive. But if you can find a team in these next 4 or 5, that's usually a good place to go. So what we do is we broke out the team runs per game for the season last 3, batting average season last 3, last 10 power ranking, and then what an average stack costs. So when we're looking at stacking, I'm always looking at what's the average cost per hitter for a 5-man stack. So the top 5 highest price hitters is going to be an average price here. And then the 2nd through 6th is going to be here. So this gives you a range. So I can see I can stack Washington from 3140 to 3460. That's a very cheap stack. Now I can stack Colorado from 4200 to about 4700. That's pretty modest. But if I go down here to the Angels, I'm going to go 4700 to 5200. It's going to be a lot more expensive. So if you get an expensive stack and then you're looking for a cheap one, you can always sort this low to high and say, okay, out of these teams, these are the cheap stacks. You can see who's got the highest implied total. You can see how they've been doing. So San Francisco, the last 3 games, they've scored an average of 10.3 runs. They're batting .319 and they're 9th in our power rankings. And I can stack the top 5 most expensive hitters for 3880. That's probably a good one I would take a look at. And you can look over here, see the weather. You can see he's facing Brad Keller. And then when we're looking at the pitchers, you can see how many earned runs they've allowed over their last 5 starts. So each pitcher has 1 start, so there's only 1 number here. And then you can see here if there's any batter versus pitcher history to see if the team's good or bad. Looking across here, if it's over 50 at-bats, I believe I highlighted this light blue, so that's one you can start looking at. So the one that jumps out at me here, Savali, only 9 for 49, batting 184, but they've got 4 home runs. And then over here, if you want to look at fantasy points, if that makes more sense to you, you can see what they've scored fantasy-wise. This also helps if you're looking at pitchers, because if you see a pitcher that's doing good in a team like the Royals, who are scoring 1.3 runs per game over the last 3 and batting 151, you know, maybe you want to come over here and play some Alex Cobb in DFS or look at some player props. Flipping over here, we've also got our current season ERA, xFIP, K9, and average. Again, it helps for player props. You know, if you've got someone with a K9 of 6.4, he's probably not going to get a lot of Ks, but if you got someone with a 12.6, he's probably going to get a lot more strikeouts. And then I also brought in the last season numbers here so you can compare them. So the stacker tab is great if you want to find out who's chalky, good place to stack. Go from there. Our hitters tab's pretty self-explanatory. Price picks tab, kind of the same. It's just like NBA. We got the player logs. It's red if it's under, green if it's over. We have our hit rate. And then we have all our stats over here. We have the batter versus pitcher data. I wanted to bring BVP in for some of these total bases and hitting stats, but again, we're still trying to fill out some of the game logs. You can see some here, like the pitching outs wins, new. I haven't brought that one in yet. I need to work on that this weekend. Hitter fantasy score, you can get their fantasy score, see who's been over, who's been hot, who's been cold. So it should be a lot of fun. Sorry, I'm losing my voice now. I've been talking so much, but I wanted to show you this stacker tab. Huge, 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 huge if you're playing DFS. Also, good place to look for pitchers. And then over here on the main, just flip through these games. We're also working on a scoreboard that will bring all of this information up for all the games so you can kind of look at the advantages and see them all together. I plan on working on that this weekend. But again, that's what we got for 2023. I really like it. I love the player logs. They're filling in nicely. We'll continue to add the names as people come up. So if you see a player we're missing, don't worry. I see it. We are working on it. So good luck, guys, and hopefully we'll have some more content soon. Thank you.